fringes of something very fundamental to higher education reform, and that's the cost issue.
Well, Sarah's right. If she mentions accreditation, it automatically motivates me to follow up. One of the things that state legislators can look at is many of you have statutes now which condition your state benefits on national accreditation, regional accreditation, and you may want to reconsider that. And I know Texas is in a case in point where there have been efforts to try to eliminate accreditation barriers to new entrants, because often it is very hard for a new institution, whether it's a for-profit or a non-profit, to open up its doors to students because of the various barricades that the accreditation process sets up. And it used to be that in Texas you had to be regionally accredited, and they now make it possible as long as you are accredited by any nationally certified accrediting body that you can do business in Texas, providing a lot more competition amongst institutions and giving students a great deal more choice. I would also recommend, and this is not on the accreditation issue, but an example of a system that I think is doing an extremely good job in reaching out to K-12 is the City University of New York system. There has, I think, historically been a real disconnect between higher ed and K-12. The professors are often very unhappy and say that kids are not well prepared, but there has really not been much of a dialogue between those two sectors. This is something I think the Spellings Commission talked about. CUNY has representatives from the college that go out into the high schools and who are there talking to students early, freshman and sophomore year, to let them know what the expectations will be so that they are already attempting to get them to think about college success and college requirements. There's been a massive renaissance, really, in terms of quality at the City University of New York system. They have put remediation into the community colleges so as to ensure a real college-level education in the 4-year. And it's interesting to note that when we looked at their general education, 2 of the schools that got an A in our report card, Brooklyn and Hunter, were in that system, and they do it at a very, very low cost. So that might be a system worth looking at.
Maybe on the cost issue, a sort of favorite topic of mine, and it's one that you all may face as you talk to your colleges and universities, is that it struck me in both institutions I've been associated with, there's a tremendous pressure on the part of faculty to reduce the teaching load, their teaching load. And remember that people, paying faculty and others is a huge part of the expense. And, whether they want to go from a 4.4 load to a 4.3 load to a 3, I mean, they go down at some of the most expensive institutions. You have very distinguished faculty who may teach 1 seminar a year and yet get paid a great deal of money. Those are typically not state institutions. But I think, there's always an argument, faculty, and I love them dearly, but they're always saying that they're, overworked and underpaid, and they're great people. But I think it's important to keep your eye on the teaching load and to resist these pressures to constantly reduce it so that they can do more research. If the research is really cutting-edge research that's going to improve everyone's quality of life, fine. But if not, I personally have some reservations about it. It's a big, big factor in driving up cost.
Okay, Joe Sywert, from a state representative from Kansas. Kind of a 3-part question is what we've been talking about, and one of them is facts on, I got 7 school districts that range anywhere from 300 students to 2,500. So there's quite a bit of diversity, but visiting with all the superintendents, they give me 3 basic questions or problems that they have to deal with, and maybe how we can do. Part of it's a discipline and a legal issue. They're afraid to discipline because of legal lawsuits. The other one is the union contracts based on their budgets, that they can't get rid of tenured teachers and promote merit pay that would help what we're talking about, performance-based. And the third is No Child Left Behind, because a lot of them don't have such big problems with that, and it's a federal mandated one, but they have to dedicate a lot of money to it. Like one school has one child that they spend over $60,000 a year on just to provide service because of the legal issues involved with it. And in a small district, that's a huge amount of their money. What can the state legislators do, or what would you recommend that we can do to, in our particular case, address some of those issues?
Art, you want to go first?
Sure. I don't have a great answer on the discipline one. I think that's an area where I don't know how to say it. I think a lot of school systems and even in some of the big cities have taken some pretty drastic measures. I heard Joel Klein speak recently. He's the chancellor in New York City, and they really reduced the discipline issue. They put police officers or security people in most schools, and of course, a lot of it depends on the principal. But I guess I'm not one who can. Yeah, would you have any comment on it?
Well, it's not so much the discipline problem as the legal liability if they do discipline a kid. I mean, I'm not talking. Thank you. I'm not talking that we have,
Sure.
Need police officers, but they take a kid that's in high school and
And
is disruptive, but they can't take him out of class because the parents bring a lawyer in and they say he is going to go to class.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, that goes to, this whole question of our legal system. We, at the Chamber, one of our top other priorities is tort reform. We think that there's way too much litigation. It causes problems across the board. In the healthcare area, for example, we think that first thing ought to be done is malpractice reform. And so I guess I don't have an answer other than we need to deal with this just overly, the trial bar, which goes crazy. The second one, the union contract's extremely important. We just, at the Chamber, put out a report 2 or 3 weeks ago in conjunction with a liberal think tank called the Center for American Progress and with AEI, and you may want to look at it. It's all about innovation in K through 12 education. And one of the things we address is we grade the states in a variety of areas, and one of the areas is how easy or difficult is it to get rid of ineffective teachers. It's under the Chamber website, and it would be a report card. It would be uschamber.com, ICW report card. And you ought to look at that. And some states, no state does great, but for example, in this area, Virginia does a lot better than Maryland and the District of Columbia, where you almost can't get rid of anybody. The more it is a union state, the harder it is. But states are, and interestingly, I have to give credit to this administration. Secretary Duncan is very focused on this issue of how to deal with it and how to get rid of teachers who are not performing. It is a huge issue, and it's a kind of a school district by school district issue, but I think it's rising to the top. And finally, No Child Left Behind as a mandate, I'm afraid there's not a whole lot you can do about that. That's the laws. You got to do these things. There's actually litigation saying it's an unfunded mandate, and therefore the state of Michigan or some district out there doesn't have to comply. And the court out there has been kind of split. I don't know, Sarah may have some thoughts on that. She was at the department.